All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6:03 p.m. on Thursday, August 12th. So I'm going to go ahead and call this UBI Universal Basic Income Task Force to order. When I call your name, just please say here for the record. Carolyn Anderson.
Here.
Colleen Bennett. Christine Caruso.
Here.
Amanda Detmer. Stephen Palmer.
Here.
Gina Rosich.
Here.
And Stephen Ross. Okay, so thank you all for being with us. Before we get into the agenda, we do have public comment open and available. Are there any members from the public who are on the phone or on the video with us that would like to say a few words? Hearing none, let's go ahead and move on to item number 3. I want to take this opportunity to welcome our newest members, Stefan and Christine. Thank you both for volunteering your time to serve on this very important task force in order to develop a UBI pilot program for the city of Hartford. This program hopes to not only deliver immediate assistance to families across Hartford, but in an attempt to expand services and resources to all members throughout the city and across the state. So I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure I speak for everyone else on the task force when I just say thank you both, and we're very excited to be working with you. If you'd like to take a couple of minutes, we'd love to hear a little bit more about you, what you hope to get out of this, and yeah, we'll give everyone an opportunity to familiarize each other. We'll go ahead and start with you, Stefan.
Well, my name is Stefan Palmer. I am a children parent consultant for the state of Connecticut. I've been working with children for the last 7 years. I've also been working with AFCAMP for juvenile justice reform. Currently working with OEC to help them create a parent cabinet to work with the community and communicate with OEC staff to better build their relationship with the community. I also own a youth program called Youth on Fire in the city of Hartford. We work with youth ages 9 to 18, young men and women, and I own a fatherhood program in Hartford as well. We work with single fathers. I'm a single father myself, raising my 5-year-old son, and I have 4 other children as well. Glad to be on the committee and look forward to working with everybody.
Yeah, we're very happy to have you. Thank you. And Christine?
Hi, thanks, David. I am really excited to be joining the task force, which I had heard about from Gina. And I was very recently formally a faculty at USJ along with her, and I am about to begin on Monday a new role as co-chief research officer at the Hispanic Health Council in downtown Hartford. And I'm very excited as a public health professional and environmental psychologist to be able to work with this task force on this really wonderful and innovative project that, to me, gets at the core of social determinants of health. So really excited. Thank you.
Yeah, we're very lucky to have you as well, Christine, and thank you. Gina, Carolyn, would you both like to just give a brief overview and introduction for our new task force members?
Sure. So again, my name is Dr. Gina Rosich, and I'm assistant professor at the University of St. Joseph Department of Social Work and Equitable Community Practice. UBI is fully aligned with the values of the social work profession in terms of equity. And I envision this project looking at not only economic equity, but other forms of equity as well. And, racial and economic justice basically is the underscored value system of a program like this. So I'm really looking forward to working with the other members of the committee and members of the community.
Thank you very much, Gina. And Carolyn?
Hi, I start the video. Hi, I'm Carolyn. I mentioned on the community forum that I live down by the shore, but my connection to the city of Hartford is for the past 15 years. I've run an event where my small town of Killingworth, all the residents, we bring donations up to now the Hartford schools. We collaborate with them. So the kids in the schools can choose gifts to give to their families for the holidays. So this will be the 15th year, and we're up to 5,000 kids that we've supported throughout all these years. So clearly, really interested in, doing my part, I guess, for, Hartford kids and the city of Hartford. My background is more in project management, communications, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Carolyn. So seeing all of you, I'm really excited. I think that we're going to accomplish a lot over the next couple months. And so I'm looking forward to having you both hit the ground running, and I'm always here for you as a resource. You can contact our office, the Office of Council President. You can contact any member of the task force, and we'll be there for both of you. So welcome. I'm looking forward to the work, and let's make some magic. So let's go ahead and get into approval of minutes from July 8th. I'm going to go ahead and I don't know if I need a motion for this, but we're going to go ahead and postpone this until the next task force meeting to give everyone an opportunity to review the minutes, especially for our newer members, just so you have an opportunity to get yourself caught up. I do want to recognize Amanda, who has joined us and is also a member of the task force. Amanda, do you want to take just a minute or so and just do a brief introduction so folks know who you are?
Sure. Thanks, David. Sorry, everybody, for being late. I had a once-a-year meeting that was, of course, scheduled to be from 5:30 to 6:30, but it got done early, so I'm glad I'm only a little late. I am Amanda Detmer. I am an associate research scientist at the Yale Child Study Center, and I research how early life experiences get under the skin to impact children's and families' risk and resilience for chronic stress and then associated behavioral, cognitive, and health outcomes. So I'm really happy to see old friends and new ones.
Thank you very much, Amanda. It's good to see you. So just to get you caught up, we're going to go ahead and postpone the approval of minutes until the next task force meeting. And let's get right into the next item on the agenda, item number 5, which is the community forum discussion, where we not only were able to interact and engage with Hartford residents, but we were able to recruit some of them, as we know now. So I'd like to hear everyone's feedback. I put some questions down on the agenda. What did we have, or what did we learn? How do we keep folks engaged? And where do we go from here? But really, this is an open discussion. This is really an opportunity to reflect on the community discussion itself, to determine, what we got out of it the most, what we did not get out of it, and whether or not we need to have another one. And if so, when did we want to do that? So I'll turn the floor over to all of you, and we can go from here.
I'd like to start, if that's all right. Since I have some notes. There were a number of themes that came up and a couple of specific suggestions that were extremely helpful. I had a list of questions, not all of which we managed to get responses to at that meeting. And I am curious to know if there are responses on the Facebook page that we might be able to follow up on. But I myself still have those some of those burning questions that I think will continue to come up. And so for one thing, I'm exceptionally thankful to have Stephen Palmer here now as a key informant from the community, who I foresee being a really integral role in gaining some community input and information in how we shape this program. A couple of the things that I took notes on. One is there was a suggestion of using an ITIN versus a social security number as something for us to think about. Folks were asking us about immigration status, so that's something that we will now need to consider as we look at our inclusion criteria. And the one concern that came up repeatedly, which was our concern from the very beginning, was the benefits cliff. And I started doing some more research on the benefits cliff, which I will ask Carolyn to talk about when we get to later on in the meeting. But I started us on that path, and which is what made me think that we might want to consult with an attorney and possibly a tax accountant for opinions to inform how we manage benefits cliff type of problems that can occur. Other things that came up were, I believe Yadira mentioned having specific groups that we might be able to work with to have benefits counselors. And so I'd like to follow up on that lead with her to identify those resources that can help us navigate this process effectively. Folks were interested in teacher observations, and it piggybacked with our concerns and questions, not concerns, but it piggybacked with our interests in terms of child outcomes, right? The behavioral outcomes. So I was very encouraged to hear that interest. Definitely there was confirmation that debit card is the way to go. That seems to be universal standard across, well, I don't want to say it's universal standard, but I would say that it's very common across UBIs and GI programs from what I'm seeing as the most effective way to get cash in hand to people. So hearing that endorsement from the community was good to hear. Somebody suggested that we do payments twice a month instead of once a month. So that's something that we should talk about, both in terms of being useful and effective for the folks who are on the receiving end, and also how we would handle that on the management end, if that's something that would be feasible or not. So that's something else that opened up as a conversation for us to look at. Taking a look here, folks asked about multiple languages, both at forums and then in working with people. So that's a point that, we've had since the beginning, was how to ensure that language doesn't become a barrier for both folks in the community providing their input and then us working on this actual program. So in addition to that, I had asked a question which we didn't get to an answer to. There were multiple questions that we didn't get really answers to because people wanted to ask us questions more than answer them, I felt. But in terms of selection and ensuring that we don't have coerciveness and that there is truthfulness and honesty, and being as open as possible with the community in terms of this project, which, from the very beginning has been my standpoint. The no research about us without us includes both community input and total honesty with folks about how do we design and implement these things. One of the things that I've learned from the guaranteed income community of practice is the importance of having developing the relationship with the participants. And having, like a field person who's going to be really an anchor point for concerns, and hearing the concerns of the community, really kind of, if not the specific concerns, the fact that folks have serious concerns is in itself, an important indicator of the need to have a point person when we move forward, or more than one point people, to ensure maximum amount of trust and transparency with people in terms of what we're doing. And the last thing was there was multiple folks who asked if the people here are parents. And I was not expecting that question, and my brain kind of froze, to be honest. I could have said yes, because I know for a fact that we do have parents on here, but at the moment I was like, oh, I don't know. So, but what that highlighted was the importance of the perspective since we are going to, yes, thank you, Amanda. Since we are going to be implementing this program with 25 single parent families, that it's important that the perspectives of parents be baked into the design. And so I wanted to make sure that that was clearly mentioned, and also, you know, my momentary brain fart when the question was asked. So thank you.
Quick question on the debit card situation you spoke on for the payments. I know myself personally doing this over the last 7 years, and currently through 3 different committees, they do run into issues. Right now, I know OEC is having issues with the credit cards because they expire. And once they expire, you cannot get your money back. And that means the recipients have to now wait for you to find another card situation. Jen, the same thing happened where the cards expired. Parents had to wait, I think it was like 2 or 4 months to get their payments. And a lot of people right now are going towards just the check situation because it's quicker and it's less drawn out.
Thank you, Stefan. My immediate reaction to that is there's two pieces. One is this would be an easily resolvable problem in terms of ensuring that whoever we work with to get the cards have expiration dates that are well beyond the time frame of the actual pilot, but that we need to be cognizant of that when we hand them out. So thank you for bringing that up. The other piece is if we didn't do that, an option would be a cash transfer. Not everybody has bank accounts, right? And the ideal, one of the things with the cards is that one of the things we're going to need to do is track what people do with the money. And this becomes one easy way to track. We're not telling people what to do with the money because that's not what a UBI is about, but it's a way of easily gathering data for us. So we want to make sure that we are able to do that. And we want to 100% make sure people are not waiting on that money, that they know every month that they're getting it. Otherwise, the program in itself would be a failure. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I want to second that. Thank you, Stefan, because that's a really good point. And we absolutely need to make sure we do get cards with maybe an expiration date 3 years from whenever or something, whenever it's issued. I had a follow-up question. Have you encountered that folks have had any other problems with the debit cards besides the expiration date?
I was in a group this morning, the JJPLC group. It was actually 6 different groups across Connecticut that were together. This was one of the topics that came up. Some parents in New Haven are having issues. Some cards not working at gas stations, some cards not working online. The next question would be, is it going to be multiple cards or is it going to be one card? Because a lot of parents are saying they're feeling embarrassed because they have to walk into the store with 6, 7 cards to purchase one thing. I mean, these are things that we have to look at ahead of time. There are cards that you can purchase to where you can do regular deposits onto it through banks. And again, going through a bank, you can track everything. But these are issues that are coming up now. A lot of people are starting to feel embarrassed. A lot of people are saying they're tired of waiting for the money. A lot of people are saying, okay, if we did the work for you last month, and we're like 6 weeks later and we're still not getting paid.
Right.
I just say, if you're going to do the cards, make sure you find a reliable system that works. Mm-hmm. Make sure the system is up and running before the program starts. Mm-hmm. Make sure you have someone who solely focuses on that. Not, okay, we have to contact so-and-so, so-and-so has to contact so-and-so. Select one person from the committee or from the agency to just oversee that and give updates on that.
Thank you, Stefan. That's so insightful.
So, I mean, I could just chime in a little bit here. We actually are developing a partnership with Visa. And so these are basically going to be just like any other credit card. Visa is going to allow the folks who are going to be participating in the program to do cash advances. So they don't have to feel as though all they have is the card. If they want to pull $100 out, there's no interest or anything like that. Visa is a partner that works with other cities, specifically in UBI. And so, you know, they're not going to be handling these cards the way they would any other regular credit card, but it would look like and function as if it was a regular credit card. So hopefully that will help ease some of the concerns that community members might have over the credit cards. But we did feel, as to Gina's point earlier, we did feel that by using the cards, we can gather the data that we need to without being intrusive. Like we don't want to put these folks in a position where they have to feel embarrassed by telling us what they use the money for. And so this just seemed like the best way to do that. And the reason that we're gathering this data is because our goal is at the end of the year for us to produce a report, a white paper that we can then use to leverage at the state level so that we can get a UBI expanded program, not just for Hartford, but in potentially other cities like Bridgeport and New Haven. And we can start to see some additional funding come through, because 25 families, there's a lot of families in need here in Hartford, and 25 is just not enough. But we need money to expand it. And so we're hoping to be able to use the data that we collect to then solicit additional funders. So any other thoughts on the community forum? Thank you, Gina, for giving such a thorough breakdown. You know, as community members, Stefan, what did you have to say about it? Like, what was your impression of the entire event, and any recommendations that you have for us?
I think the event was very informational. Again, as Gina said, there were a lot of questions that didn't get answered that were in the chat from the community and from members on the committee here. I think if we did do another forum, leave a grace period for a Q&A where the questions can get answered and notes could be taken effectively. I know for a fact the community had way more questions, but because everybody was trying to get information out, everybody was trying to answer questions when they could, the dialogue really didn't get to take place like it should have. So I would just say, make sure there's time for Q&A or more time altogether in the event. But other than that, the information was given out gracefully. The interaction with the community was great. The way everybody flowed together was perfect. Everybody was on one accord. The information gelled together. The delivery of everything was good. The only question I walked away with was, how do single fathers fit into this? But I asked
That's simple. We're choosing 25 single parent families. Single parent can be a father, can be a mother, can be a parent who's non-binary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that, so we have a little bit of flexibility. And so City Council originally, knowing that we would only be able to select a very few, individuals to participate in the pilot, of course, council members immediately thought, well, single parents, they need the most help. You know, there's a lot more, that can be benefited from a single parent family participating in this than a family with two parents. Not that there's not a two-parent family that is also in need, but we know that single parents generally tend to have to work multiple jobs in order to support their families. They are not able to be as involved in their kids' education. They're not able to do the extracurriculars at the same level as two-parent families. I mean, there's a lot of data that's already out there. And so I think that City Council was like, look, we've got a limited number of people that can participate. Let's just focus on single parents. But single parents can be very broad. Folks who have adopted kids, grandparents who are also raising their kids, I mean, I think that we do have freedom and flexibility to define what a single parent is and is, or is, I'll just leave it at is. So that would be my take on it.
Could I, that's a great point, David. Thank you. And especially Stefan for raising the point about single fathers. I'd like to, put it on this public record, a suggestion that we as a task force maybe consider just modifying our language a little bit. Instead of saying single parent, refer to it as single caregiver. That's much more inclusive, and this is in fact happening in the research world too, where instead of, it used to be about mother-infant interactions, then it was parent-infant interactions, and now it's caregiver-infant interactions. It's really recognizing that a caregiver can be, just like you said, David, could be a biological mother, biological father, a grandparent, or a family member, or a friend, or someone who's not biologically related. It just can be someone who is responsible for the care of the child.
Yep, the primary caregiver, 100%.
Yeah.
The question that I keep running into is why a working parent instead of a parent in training to trying to get off the system? We would get way more data if we got 25 parents that are in a job training format taking steps to get off of state assistance, wouldn't we? Compared to parents that are already working.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. I think that, again, coming from the council members' perspective, is we have been approached by many parents who are having to work multiple jobs. And so if they already have a proven track record of employment, then they have shown that they're more committed to maintaining that employment. But I think, again, we have some freedom and some flexibility with this. If they're in a training program, I don't see why we wouldn't be able to support them through that. Again, just saying, there's a lot of need in Hartford. 25 people is not a lot. And so when we are going through the folks who are interested in this, how do we really identify 25 folks who have, communicated to us that their need is greater than the rest of the city? And we already know that every neighborhood needs help. So that's up for us,
I just think it falls into the benefit cliffs that the Jen is studying. Governor Lamont has a task force studying benefit cliffs right now, trying to help families get off of state assistance. I just think it ties in together. And there's a lot of funding behind it. I think it would help us get a lot of attention on the UBI if we pulled in some of the people that were going through the benefit cliff system, trying to get out of the system, trying to get into employment, trying to reach stability. There's a lot of eyes on it as far as the state level.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think that we've been told by residents in Hartford that, I was offered a promotion and I turned it down because getting that extra income would then eliminate all of these other benefits that I'm receiving, and it would actually be a net loss for my family. That's really heartbreaking. Like that's not, we're adding to the systems that are currently in place, are adding to a generational issue in poverty, and so I feel like this might be, and this might just be the optimist in me, this might be that leg up that's going to really help break some of these cycles. And so we can start to see some generational wealth being accumulated, especially in a city like Hartford. So I'm definitely open to that for sure.
And Stefan, in as much as we are compelled to follow the directive of the city council in what we are doing, we are still, as a committee, able to make a decision about how we define employed for the purpose of this study. Okay, so we have that kind of latitude. We can't turn around and change the scope of it and say we don't want to work with single caregivers anymore, or we don't want to work with ABC XYZ, right? Because that's our marching orders, if you will. But we can decide within that where, where we draw some of those lines, and where will it be meaningful, and where can we do the most good and the least harm. So, because we don't want to do any harm to folks. And so that becomes part of the conversations we have in building this, and one way in which your input will really be instrumental. I also really want to hear more from you. We'll talk offline, more of these details about what's happening on the state level. The information that you have will be very helpful for us. I'm really looking forward to having that conversation with you.
So any other thoughts on the community forum?
I just want to reiterate what Stefan said, that we needed more time. Like I had this whole presentation piece, and then before I knew it, to get answers, there was no time to get answers. And so I'm not sure how to balance giving information and getting information, and how we can manage that in multiple community forums or through multiple feedback mechanisms.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if I would highly recommend we do another community forum, and we'll leave an hour at the end just specifically for questions and answers, because there were a lot of questions. People were asking questions through the Q&A feature through Zoom. People were chatting out questions. People were calling in with questions. People were commenting on our Facebook with questions. There was a lot. And also, I mean, because we received so many questions, I can't help but wonder if we have done a good enough job communicating out to the public in general, making sure that folks know what we're doing, what a UBI is, and how they can stay involved. And that might require us to put in some more work to create some, communication collateral.
David, I did send you an attachment in an email. It may be worth looking at what other projects have done to create an information page, so that some of those questions can be answered by simply referring people to a fully in-depth information page.
Do we have a Facebook or an Instagram page? Because if we do, there could be 2-minute, 3-minute videos put up giving informational sections. You can do Q&As live right through both platforms. I mean, it just doesn't have to be when the committee is having a meeting. We can, okay, you know what, everybody, is anybody free Thursday? Let's go live on Instagram and talk to the community. Or is anybody free Saturday? Let's go live on Facebook and answer some questions. It gives the community a chance to actually meet and greet with us a little bit more, get comfortable with us, answer questions, and feel like they're a part of everything that's taking place step by step.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That's not my area of expertise. And so I would definitely be open to doing that, as long as I've got someone who can provide me with some guidance. Because I'm not the most tech savvy either. It took me quite a while to figure out Zoom. So, but yes, I think that's a great idea for sure.
And also, because we need to answer questions to the public, we also need to get feedback from the public in putting this design together. And so, like I said, Stefan is going to be one of our key informants in the community, but he can't carry the entire community on his shoulders.
Well, and I have to say, Colleen and Carolyn, this is a really good opportunity to invest more time and resources into that specific working group, because I do think that working group has the most experience in working with the community. And so we'll get into that a little bit as we move throughout the meeting. But just to give everyone an idea, a reminder, we have 2 working groups, and Gina and Carolyn, if you'd like to talk about each, that would be great, just to give everyone the background.
Okay. I guess we're on point number 4. So the research working group is engaging in the design, right, of the pilot and the research that drives the pilot. I'm not sure what else to say at this point. I'm going to schedule a meeting with folks so we can, pull our ideas together and develop a working document as like a pre-analysis plan. But also it informs the actual program itself because it sets the parameters for what we're measuring. And then the program group is needs to focus more on certain sort of nitty-gritty aspects of the program development itself. I'm not sure how best to kind of put that. I did ask Carolyn, for example, to start looking into policies around benefits cliff, because that's going to be a really important piece of that information, which is again why I had suggested that we also maybe consult with a tax accountant and an attorney who knows about benefits to assist us developing the relationship so that we can determine how we're going to interface with the folks who are the participants in the program, right? Not only what kind of supports might they need, but can we maybe identify an organization or, field people, what would we need to have those relationships, things like the card, having the card available, the things that people are going to be doing and the people who are going to be interacting with them in the doing of the program. That was not very articulate, but I think you know what I mean.
Carolyn, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, as you mentioned, David and Gina, right now or currently our subcommittee's focus has been primarily on, community outreach and participation communication specific to the community forum. And I look forward to having more conversations, with you, Gina and David, I think to better understand, Gina, I think, as you said, the nitty gritty pieces that the members of, the program management subcommittee, what we really should be working on and tasked with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. In my mind, and this is where I would kind of hope, because I have to communicate, to council and to residents that call into our offices. And so when I think about these working groups, I think of one group being the research focus, determining how best to identify folks, what metrics we're going to use to gauge success of the program. What are our research questions going into it? What are some of the goals that we have with the program, and how can we ensure equity in the program? The other working group, the program management working group, in my mind, I rationalize that group to be initially doing the community outreach, trying to identify, using the scope that's provided by the research group, a list of potential participants. Now, again, we're not going to contact folks, but we need to start getting together some residents, whether that be emails or if we want to focus on a specific zip code, getting an idea of what residents we're going to market to. How are we going to educate those residents to apply for participation in the program? And then how is the program going to be managed from month to month? That's
right.
How I rationalize that.
Right. And I would add that recruitment needs to first be designed by research, but then the implementation of it can be designed, with the other team, with Carolyn's team. Just to kind of throw that out, as it becomes very, very specific in terms of how you do recruitment. And in particular, you can't even begin to talk about recruiting until you have IRB approval.
So hopefully that helps a little bit, Carolyn. I know that there's still a lot up in there, and I think part of that is just because I know that on the research side of things, I think that once the research questions get identified, that will really help us better understand what our next steps should be, particularly with the community forum. But I do think that we can start working on those education materials now. I do think that we can start to put together a one-page fact sheet. I do think that we can focus our efforts on building out the Facebook group and making sure that people know that they can go there to ask questions. I do think that that specific working group could start to put together a schedule now with those 2-minute informational videos that we can post on the Facebook page, or that we can blast out on the City of Hartford's website. Those are all things that we can do now, and it's all about engaging with the community, getting community feedback, so that we can then provide that information to the research group so that they can develop a robust program.
My question to getting out to the community. How do I word this? Are there going to be any efforts to actually get out in the community to earn the trust of the community? And I say that because I live in Hartford's North End. I do multiple events in the North End, and I talk with a lot of people in the North End, and they do not trust anything coming from Hartford at all. So my question is there going to be any steps taken to actually get into the community to get people to trust the program? Because if they don't trust you, they're not going to sign up for it, no matter how much money you throw at them. I've heard, oh, it's another program. They just want us for numbers. They're going to get their funding and disappear. They don't really care about the people of Hartford. I mean, there's a list of things that I can say that residents have said about multiple programs. When the mayor rolled out his summer program, free summer program thing, the reason why people did not sign up for it is because they don't trust anything coming from the city. That's why I asked the question, how are we going to get in the community to actually get people to trust the program?
I think that's an excellent question, Stefan, and I think that's something that we should strategize together on.
I mean, we encountered that. I started in the City of Hartford as a Vista member. And so, there's this idea that I came from some Ivy League school. And I do think that, part of it is letting folks get to know us. I found that, I didn't come to the table like with connections. I have no political activists in my corner. I just worked really hard, and I was a Vista member. I was making very little money, but I was out in the community trying to do a good job, and people got to know me. They got to learn about what I was about. And, slowly but surely I started to hopefully win some folks over. I think that it's difficult because there's a natural and probably justified suspicion coming from City Hall in general. I mean, we've had some issues for sure, but I think that one of the strategies that I recommend we use is just letting people get to know us, learn about who we are, what we're about, and then having like people. I organize community forums and public hearings for people all the time. And truthfully, that's like the worst way of getting community feedback. And so I think that if we make it so where we're actually listening to people and then applying the feedback that we're given, then people will start to feel as though maybe they do have some input. More often than not, there are folks that go out into the community, have these community meetings, listen to all this great feedback, and then don't use any of it. And so I do think that, we do need to be more mindful of what we hope to get out of these discussions and how we're going to actually apply it.
You're muted.
Oh no, I was talking to my son. I apologize.
I'm not entirely sure that Stefan got the answer that he wanted. I don't know. I may be presuming, but is it I think it would be worthwhile for our task force to really brainstorm and set aside time, even offline from these meetings, to not brainstorm how best to get into the community and schedule those like, you know, in-person, feet on the ground kinds of interacting. And I agree that with something that David said earlier, which is once we know more concretely how the pilot will operate and will roll out, then we can do that, because we want to be sure that we can answer every question that comes our way and to alleviate any concerns. But I think you have an excellent point, Stefan, that FaceTime with community members, and which is just, it's hard even in this way. So a safe way to conduct FaceTime in real time would be the ideal way to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're, if you have ideas or recommendations, you know, you're a voting member of the task force now. And so you can help drive some of these efforts. You know, you can help inform some of our decision making. And so I definitely am open to any and all input. It's just a matter of trying to determine, you know, how best to utilize our resources, which are limited. And then also, all of you are working professionals and you're volunteering your time. City council as a whole, as a department within the city, does not have administrative staff. Council members have one assistant that handles the administrative work for that council member, whether that be constituent services or, you know, scheduling for meetings, or, you know, our council committee meetings, the agenda, writing resolutions, managing our ordinances, whatever that council member requires, they have one staff member. This is an effort out of council president's office, which is why I, as her executive assistant, are able to dedicate as much time to it as I am. But we're just limited. You know, we don't have a lot of people. And I think that that's ultimately going to inhibit our ability to be as effective as we would like to be. But that doesn't mean that we can't do a good job. And so I do think that if we're smart, if we work effectively, if we are communicating with one another, being very specific in what we want to get out of our time from week to week, from month to month, we can achieve some of these goals.
And I would just like to add that, you know, Stefan, now that you are officially one of the members, you get to go from identifying the problems to working on those solutions, which is super exciting.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, if you or Colleen or Carolyn or Christine, if any of you was to call me tomorrow and say, hey, look, I want to do this, I will be the first one to say, yes, let's do it. Let's get some people together. I can recruit some volunteers. If you want to do a community cleanup, if you wanted to do a community forum, if you wanted to do door-to-door knocking, there are resources that we might be able to tap to help make that happen. I'm really taking my points from all of you. I look to all of you as the experts in this. And so, you know, I'm here as a resource, but I definitely don't want to be a driver of this effort.
And actually to that point, David, Colleen did have another outreach idea, which she had spoken to me about, but because you were on vacation, I suggested that she reach out to you when you got back. And Stefan, I fully encourage you to get to know Colleen and of course, Carolyn in this work and some of these ideas.
Cool. So are there any other working group updates or questions from our new members that you would like to ask?
There is one in the chat. Do you want, I don't know if you want me to read aloud?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, Tom. Do you want to go ahead and take that, Amanda?
Oh, I mean, I can read it aloud. So it's on the record. Need clarity on your target group for participants before doing too much outreach. Yes, absolutely. One excellent way to promote distrust is to get a bunch of people excited and then tell them they're not who you're trying to recruit. Outreach must be consistent on who you want to recruit. Absolutely, totally. And
Okay.
that's where also very clear communication, consistently clear communication is key. That's clear from the beginning who this program is intending to recruit.
So then, reverse engineering some of this, we know where we want to be at the end. So if we work backwards, what steps do we need to, or what information are we missing before we can figure out which group we're going to be targeting? And to that, I would say, we have a group of researchers and folks who do this type of work. What are some of your goals? I would still like to know, what are some of the things that you would like to measure as part of this program? I think that if we can start to compile what your individual goals from a research perspective might be, then that might help inform or at least narrow down who we want to target that still fits within the parameters of what city council is ultimately looking for. I think expanding it to caregivers is a great idea. We use that term frequently within the work that I do, and it's so much more equitable, but that's so broad. What does that really mean for us? And how can we identify 25 caregivers plus a control group? And then how do we compensate that control group as well? We've had some residents who have sent in some ideas on other ways that we can compensate people outside of, giving them a $500 monthly payment. It could be a reduction in fees. It could be elimination of city fees. Those folks may not need to pay, to have something done that they would normally have to pay for. We don't know what that's going to look like, but all those are available to us.
So, David, I'm actually really glad that you brought that up because I went to the last guaranteed income community of practice meeting. And one of the things that came up was that folks want to know that the compensation for the participants who are not in the treatment group, which is the technical term you use, that they're receiving something that's still going to be meaningful so that people don't feel coerced or used. And one of the suggestions that they had come up with was free cell phone service for a year. Another, if you give me a second, I'll find my notes. Another suggestion was, it was $50 a month and cell phone service for a year as an incentive. I prefer to use the term compensation rather than incentive because you're paying people for their precious time, right? And so that it simply raises the question of what would be meaningful without pulling away from the of receiving an actual UBI, right? And that's exactly one of the things that we're going to need input from the community about, and then doing the background work to get those funds so that that can be provided to people who are in the comparison groups, if we have comparison groups. Because again, we're going to try to design an RCT with a carve-out component that's not an RCT, that's observational in the event that we don't get funds for an RCT. Because that in itself can still be useful in informing, you're looking at the unit of analysis as individual families, right? As a way of demystifying and informing larger policy decisions.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm all for that. It's just, again, to Tom's point, how are we going to identify? Who are we identifying as part of this? And
Right.
I think that if we can answer some of these very general basic questions, then that will help, our work over the next 2 months.
And part of what needs to go into that is not only who do we want as potential participants, but part of it is really understanding the impacts of some of the benefit cliffs, because that will tell us who we may have to rule out, which is why that piece is so very important. We already know that we cannot include anyone who is receiving SSI if there's a family member receiving SSI. That is full stop, something that cannot be done. I'm still trying to do some investigations around the child support piece, and apparently nobody is looking into that. So that may be another full stop for us. We need to find out what the carve outs, the current policies are, restrictions, and what workarounds we can get around things like food stamps, SNAP benefits, Section 8 vouchers, school lunch program. I have a whole list, which I emailed to Carolyn, that we need to really intensively identify what are the policies. Are there existing carve-outs? Can we create some sort of agreement? Stefan had mentioned something about on the state level, and that's what one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Stefan, later, to get some details to find out, like we really need focused attention on that to help us determine whether certain groups of people can or cannot be included, because we don't want to run the risk of somebody being worse off as a result of receiving the UBI funds. That's like a really crucial piece.
Okay, so with all that being said, are there anything else that we wanted to talk about in terms of the working groups? From a research standpoint, as you all know, Eric Brunner is no longer a member of the task force due to some family, circumstances. And so I think that, we're probably going to, I would recommend to appoint one of our new task force members, Christine, if that's something that you might be interested in. Eric was essentially going to be a conduit between the two working groups. And so I think that, you might fit into that role pretty well. Stefan, I'm not sure if, because of the experience that you have, which group you would want to participate in, but we definitely want to try to figure out where each of you are going to go. We do use Asana as our platform to do our work offline. And so if we know which two groups or which group both of you want to be in, then we can assign you, and Amanda has been our point person for that. But to my knowledge, Asana is working out pretty well. You're not restricted to just using Asana, but it is a good way for us to try to stay on track. Because as a reminder, we literally have 2 months to start to build this report. So what are your thoughts?
David, I guess as far as what I'm, trying to hear what you're asking me is it sort of the role that you're asking me to fill, since I wasn't super familiar with Eric's role, is it to sort of liaise between the two groups, or is there sort of a different dynamic that would be addressed?
So Eric has a research background, but he also, I didn't want to put all of the researchers in one group because I do think that there needs to be some input from a research perspective to inform the program implementation group's work, so that they're not working in silos. So essentially, Eric was going to be a part of the program implementation group, and he was going to act as essentially a liaison between that group and the research group. Carolyn and Gina have picked up that communication, but ideally, Gina has a lot that she's working on. Carolyn has a lot that she's working on. Having someone else come in and act as that liaison might be a good idea.
David, can I make a suggestion? Christine, Amanda, Stephen, and I are planning a research meeting. I'm going to send out a doodle poll. And that maybe once in that meeting, one of the things that we can discuss is who would be the best person for each of these two roles going forward, rather than asking Christine to make a decision on the spot.
Yeah,
Would
and
that
that
be
is going to
okay?
be sometime in the next couple of weeks, so it won't
Yes.
be very far away.
Right.
So 4 people would constitute a quorum. You can't have a quorum participate in a meeting that isn't available to the public. So I'm trying to think of the best way to tackle this. You don't have to give me an answer right now, but I do want to put it on your radar for both of you as new task force members belonging to one of these working groups will help us over the next 2 months. So I'll leave that all up to you.
Okay, we can figure out a way to dialogue this.
Cool. So anything else with the working groups before we move on to a final report overview? Okay, so with the final report overview, I wanted to first give you all an idea of timeline, which I think is going to be really important. And then essentially like what the report should look like based on what council members are going to be looking for. So let's go ahead and start with the timeline. So the last council meeting of the year is going to be on Monday, December 13th. And that's important to know because that's when they are going to need to see the final report. The deadline for us to submit it to City Council is going to be Wednesday, December 8th. So really what for the purposes of our work, December 8th is our deadline. Like that is our final deadline. Our initial deadline for when we need to have a draft report submitted to council so that they can begin to review it is November 3rd. That will show up on their first meeting in November, which is going to be November 8th. That will be, so as soon as it shows up on the council agenda for November 8th, it will be funneled to probably OMBGA committee, the Operations Management Budget and Government Accountability Committee. That committee meeting is Monday, November 15th. And we will need to have some members of the task force be present at that meeting because council members are going to ask questions. And so this will give them an opportunity to review it. And then once it's in committee, I don't know if they're going to keep it in committee for another month or if they're going to send it back as a report. I just don't know. So I think that I can try to provide some updates as we get closer to the date, but I at least wanted you to know that so that we have a very clear idea in mind. So any questions on the dates at all? Okay, so moving into the report itself, there are going to be 4 to 5 sections that they're going to want to see in the report. The first is an introduction section where it's basically talking about our methodology. How did we come to, well, first of all, just a brief overview in the program itself, and then how we came to the decision. So the working composition of the group, how we made decisions, all of that good stuff. Then they're going to want to see a community section that's going to discuss major inputs or concerns from the community. They're going to want to know how this program is being perceived by the community, as well as what we as a task force have done to engage with the community. Then they're going to want to see the actual program itself. So a section dedicated specifically to who we're targeting and how we came to those decisions. They're going to want to see a program implementation section. Who have we identified to implement the program? How many or what kind of administrative support do we foresee the program needing? How the program is going to be managed over the course of the year. And then we'll probably need to include what surveys, if we have a sample, a survey sample, all of that's going to need to be included in these various sections. And then the final section is going to be our goals section. So that's where we'll talk a little bit about what our short-term goals are and what our long-term goals are. So those are the 5 sections that they're going to want to see as part of our final report.
Thank you, David.
Any questions on that?
I have a question, Ms. Amanda. How nitty-gritty into research methodology do you think they're going to want us to get?
Not very specific. I think that, you know, as council members, they want to know that obviously we're making informed decisions. We're approaching this equitably. And so they're going to want some information, but I don't think that any of them necessarily have the background to really get into the nitty-gritty at that level. But I would think that that's why, you know, having, you know, a couple of task force members there for the committee meeting is going to be important, because you never know. You know, I've been working with these folks for years, and I'm consistently amazed at how intuitive their questions are. So. Any other questions about those sections?
I'm sure we can email you.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, you know, a page and a half per section. I think, you know, a minimum 5. I don't want to get like too specific, but we also have to keep in mind that this is going to be available for the public. And so, you know, it needs to be presented in a way that's easily digestible, that makes sense for residents. They're going to spend a couple of months with this. And so, you know, I would just encourage everyone to be mindful about that.
That is actually extremely helpful. That definitely will guide how we structure the writing.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, so I would say that they're not going to make a decision in December to actually implement the program. Rather, what I foresee happening is us taking time as a council from December to January to have conversations with the administration to figure out how we can make this work, and then potentially greenlighting it at our second meeting in January. And we would ideally aim for a full rollout date of July 1st of 2022, with the program ending on June 30th, 2023. But that is all open. I mean, it really, we have a little bit more flexibility. Once we get something into council's hands where they can tangibly look at it and determine, yes, you know, we do know. And that's the other thing, is we also want to identify our partners. And so there will be a section, there will be an opportunity for us in the report to say, you know, here we are partnering with Visa to do the credit cards. Here's the contact information for our contact at Visa. And so they'll want to see that we've put some thought into each one of our partnerships, and that we have been communicating with those partners over the course of the next couple of months. And so, you know, if we want to partner with Charter Oak, for example, and we know that now, we can't just put them down there in the report without making contact with them and having those conversations. So that I'll leave that up to all of you, but you know, we're going to have some time to actually implement it. So any other thoughts, questions, comments, concerns?
I have a follow-up question. This is because I anticipate we may need, it may be useful for us to have kind of I guess, offline meetings rather than do this solely via email. And so I was wondering, when you said about quorum, David, you said 4 is quorum, but if we have 8 people, wouldn't 5 be quorum?
So we have 7 people. Eric, I don't count as a task force member.
Oh, you
And
don't?
Eric,
I didn't
no.
realize that. Okay, I thought you did.
no.
And
Yeah.
Never mind.
Okay.
Strike my question.
And that's the thing, I will, if we move forward with further appointments, because there are other folks who have expressed interest. If we move forward with any additional appointments, I will do my best to appoint in 2s, so that, we have those lines very clearly made. I don't want to create a situation where we have to question, our quorum at all. But it is important to be mindful. And again, that's there because we are an officially sanctioned city task force, and the public needs to be as involved as possible. Whenever we have a meeting with quorum, the residents just have to have an opportunity to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally am on board with that. I just assumed that you were counted as a member.
Nope, unfortunately, I'm not. So I also will not be able to vote on things. I can't, like, there's just certain things that I'm really here as a resource. The power really is in all of your hands. So. Any other comments? Okay. Hearing none, I know that there's going to be some emails after this. You are welcome to send me an email with any follow-up questions you might have or concerns. I do think that, Carolyn and you and I will talk offline to come up with some initial, next steps for your working group. Gina, you and I will touch base as well. I know that you're going to try to set up a research working group meeting. So there's still a lot that's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. But just as a reminder, our next meeting won't be until September. So we won't be meeting again until September 9th. Given the deadline that I just gave, our meeting September 9th is going to be pretty juicy. So I would just encourage everyone to try to be able to attend. And yeah, that's it. I don't have anything else for you all. So thank you for taking the time to be here. And I look forward to working with each and every one of you.
Thanks, everybody, and great to meet you, new members.
All right, bye-bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Bye.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.